Hey everyone, and this is Dave, and welcome to another Full Armor Gaming video. Today, we're going to be continuing our D&D for Dummies series, and today I want to cover saving throws. Now, this is something that gets a little bit tricky because it does get a little complicated. There's, ability checks, there's skill checks, there's attack rolls, there's damage rolls, and there's saving throws. And so today, what I want to do is I want to explain more what a saving throw is. There's not a ton of options in it. It's not nearly as diverse as skill checks is, but it is still something that's important to know so that if your DM says, I need you to roll a strength saving throw, you can know exactly on your sheet where you need to go and what you need to do. So there are certain classes that will give you certain proficiencies, which means that we will add our proficiency bonus to certain saving throws. So there are a total of 6. There's strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. These normally, not always, but these normally correspond with some sort of magical effect that is happening to you. And this roll is to determine the severity of the consequences of that spell, be it how much damage does it do, or does it do damage and have an additional effect, or does it fail altogether? Whether it's something from trying to mind control you, to trying to blast you with a fireball, to trying to hit you with a spell and knock you 10 feet back. There's a lot of different aspects to the game. So strength saves are normally on spells that are going to be either trying to hold you in place, be it something like entangling roots, or I think that there's a few like that. That's like the first one that comes to my mind. The dexterity save is going to be one of the more common ones. This is they're throwing something at you, some sort of spell. Can you dodge out of the way, or at least in dodging out of the way, take less of the damage? Most common, it's in the spells that have like area of effect. So like a fireball, fairy fire, lightning bolt, stuff like that. And the whole point of that saving throw is to see, do you take the full brunt of the hit, or do you like dodge out of the way and only take half damage? Constitution saving throws are where it gets a little bit trickier. So a lot of times it has to deal with like necrotic or poison based, sometimes cold based magic as well. And that's to see like how much does this affect your constitution? How much does this affect you? But there is another use for constitution saving throws. So as casters of really any type of magic, if you cast a spell and next to the spell's description, if it has a little C, that means that it's a concentration spell, which means that your character is actively concentrating on maintaining this spell. So that would be like if you were to cast Hold Person on somebody. In order for you to hold them in place, you have to concentrate on holding them in place. So there's different ways for people to break out of said spells. Sometimes it's they roll a saving throw of their own, and if their saving throw is high enough, they break out of that spell. But another way that you can break maybe an ally out of a spell is for you to attack the person that's casting it, because every time they take damage, they have to make what's called a concentration check. But what that really is a constitution saving throw. Now, the DC is constantly changing. Normally, it's going to be half of the damage that the spell does. I think with a minimum of 10, I normally just play it as it's just half. Whatever it is, it's just half. I think in the rules as written, I think there's a minimum of 10 DC. But it's one of those where if you've got a caster and they're constantly casting stuff like that, maintaining attacks on them to where they constantly have to roll to keep those spells up is a really good way to have a high chance of breaking out of those spells. The next would be intelligence saves. These tend to be a lot of things that would not meddle so much with your senses, so much as meddle with your mind. So something that would maybe have an effect of like causing fear on you, in the sense of like anything like psychic. Anything that's like psychically messing with you tends to be a lot of intelligence. And I always kind of look at it the way of like, I can tell that what's happening to me isn't real right now. And if you succeed in that intelligence check or intelligence saving throw, you can be like, no, I don't feel like this is real. You might still take some damage from it, but a lot of times the main effect that it's going for doesn't happen. That's kind of how I've always looked at intelligence saving throws. The next one would be wisdom save. And those are also a very common one as well. And there's a broad spectrum of wisdom saving throws of spells that kind of affect those, and so it's hard for me to kind of get into all of them. But a lot of times it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. So I'm pretty sure hold person is a wisdom save. The way I've always looked at that is that, am I smart enough to know that this magic isn't like, I can see that this magic isn't really affecting me, or I can sense about me that something is changing on me. Like, oh, my arms are getting stiffer. Oh, I'm going to break out of that real quick before the spell has a chance to fully set. It's kind of how I've always looked at it. It's like, are my senses heightened enough to notice that they're trying to lock me in place with like, hold person or something like that. And it's like, oh, wait, before that actually effect fully lands, I'm going to break out of it. That's kind of how I've always looked at wisdom saves. And then charisma save tends to be a lot of stuff with charming. So like I am going to try to cast charm person on someone in combat. That'd be a charisma save. Or it's like, I'm going to try to banish somebody. I'm pretty sure banishment is a charisma save. That kind of stuff. They all have their different uses, but they are very important. And I know that there are certain things that can give you proficiency outside of your class or your race. Probably the most common would be the resilient feat. So that is a very, very valuable feat. You can normally take those depending on the class. Normally the first time you can take something like that is like level 4, level 8. Anytime that you can do an ability point modifier increase, then you have the option of taking a feat as well. So if you're like, let's say you're a class that has a large weakness, like I have a cleric who has a -1 to his dexterity saving throws. That is not great. It is not a great position to be in. Any AoE spell, I'm probably going to get hit by all of it, especially when you get to higher levels. When you get to higher levels, a lot of the enemies have very high spell save DCs. And so when you do that and you have very weak saving throws, you are susceptible to a lot of damage. So the resilient feat lets you pick a certain one of these stats, be it strength, dexterity, constitution, whatever, that you don't currently have proficiency in, and it gives you proficiency in that, and it lets you add a +1 to your existing main stat. So sometimes if you're right on the verge of getting a +1 to your modifier, it's a nice little bump. There's one additional save aspect of the saving throws that I want to talk about, and that if you're playing as a caster, not always just a caster, sometimes as fighters have them, monks have them, just about everyone has some sort of spell save DC or a DC that they have built into their kit. A DC, I don't actually know what the official phrase or term for DC actually stands for, but the whole point of it is determining how high do I have to roll with my modifiers to make sure that the effect that I'm trying to, or how much does the enemy have to roll to see if my effect hits them or not. So take, for instance, a monk with their stunning strike. They have a built-in DC number to see how high do I have to roll, do they roll to see if my stun actually works or not. So that is another thing. So if you hear someone say, like, what's your spell save DC? It's normally going to be near your spells on your sheet. Up at the top, there's normally a modifier, a spell save or a spell attack number, and a spell save DC. That is your DC. So that's how you can figure that out. And if you go through the player handbook, it's got the formula to figure all of this stuff out. I don't want to get into every little aspect of things on the video because I want to keep it relatively short for you. But that's something that we can do to just kind of help us understand especially when it comes to like the role playing side of things. What does spell saving like actually look like in game? So I hope this was helpful. Like as always, like and subscribe so we can keep this stuff coming to you guys. And I want to keep doing a lot of these D&D for Dummies. So if there's a certain aspect of the game that's always kind of like befuddled you, or it's something like my DM always asks me to do this and I never really know what he's talking about and I'm too scared to ask at this point, type it in, give me a comment on it. I will try to make a video about it to help you better explain it. That way you're not learning at the table. But honestly, I do encourage you, if you are sitting at a table and you feel safe at that table, ask any question. They're more than happy to answer it. But hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.